The previous Shin Chan game combined Kuroshin, the shortened name of Crayon Shin-chan, and Bokunatsu, which is essentially My Summer Vacation. Two series together based on the hugely popular manga and anime from Crayon Shin-chan, a whimsical series set on 5-year-old Shinosuke and his many adventures. If you're from a Western audience, then you're more likely to understand if I say he's a little bit more like Dennis the Menace crossed with Stewie Griffin. Have the developer Hokkaido Artists Network managed to give us more of a game this time round though? Well, thanks to the publisher for the review copy. Is Shin Chan Shiro and the Coal Town worth getting a little bit sooty for, or are you gonna sweep it off your Switch? Well, if you get that reference, my goodness, you're as old as I am. Let's find out. Unlike the previous game, the narrative here makes a heck of a lot more sense. Shinosuke's father and the rest of the Nohara family head to the Akita prefecture because Hiroshi, Shin-chan's father's job has led him there. They stay in a traditional Japanese farmhouse, and it starts out very similar to that previous title. That is, until Shiro, your dog, leads you to a mysterious train that takes you to a town known as Coal Town, a locale seemingly frozen in time since the Showa era. Much of the game revolves around this town and trying to stop it falling into disrepair, and its classically antagonistic leader. The gameplay sees you control Shin-chan as he moves about the world, initially just collecting bugs. If he sees a small sparkling area, he can go over and use his net to catch it or collect something that's on the ground. Shiro can lead him to items if he follows him, and as you collect new species of bug and insect, of which there are 44 different types, 34 types of fish, and 22 types of wild vegetable, these are stored in a book by one of the town's inhabitants. There are small rewards, including a bit of pocket money for doing so, where initially your total money is limited by the size of your wallet, which thankfully you get a slightly larger one as the game goes on. There are a few other moments, such as being able to farm various vegetables, and there's a shop in Unbent Village as well, where you can purchase certain ingredients, and a bulletin board for fulfilling requests. The thing with Shin-chan is it's all about its whimsical pace. The time of day can be seen in the corner. The more activities you carry out, that progresses, and eventually you'll be called in by your mother for dinner. In the evening time, you can find various unique insects and bugs, but eventually you'll have to go to bed and the next day will begin. Fans of games like Animal Crossing, you'll know the general vibe, but thankfully this time around it has much more of a feeling of an actual game, and that's through the use of Coal Town. When you visit Coal Town, you meet a bunch of new characters, and also that key objective of trying to save that place. To do so, you meet an inventor who comes up with several fantastical ideas on how they're going to help the various shops around town. For example, the local bars, the water's going a little bit tepid, so you're going to try and help her create something to fix that problem. Earlier than this though, you'll help the restaurant get back on its feet, but the creation of the inventions essentially gives focus to a lot of your gathering and collecting of insects and ingredients. On paper, that's a nice enough idea. It might mean that you have to grow some of the ingredients, complete bulletin board requests to get the exact pieces you need. And for the first 2 or 3 inventions, this was fine and much better than the first game in my opinion, but it does grow a little tedious as the shopping list of items gets larger and larger as the game progresses. Now, Shin-chan isn't meant to be played in one big lump like you have to do for reviews. For that reason, I strongly believe players just relaxing and enjoying its pacing are going to get far more out of it than anyone who's having to push for a review, and I say that as someone who's literally done that for this game. Those 2 main locations are actually quite beautiful places. As you complete side quests for other characters, this then unlocks new areas for you to visit. You can purchase maps, and what this game does so well is capture that feeling of escapism. When you first ride on that little train to Coal Town, I think that moment perfectly encapsulates the world that Shin-chan wants to create. And the same can be said for the characters. There's a lot of humour in the series, and I think the translation does a much better job this time round of actually delivering that to, I guess, a Western audience. For example, Shinosuke is always getting things wrong. He might hear someone incorrectly, but they'll use rhyme, which obviously if they directly translate the Japanese potentially wouldn't work. So they've slightly adapted that to make us understand understand what he's doing. There are funny moments like at the end of the day when you sit down for dinner with your family, or you see your dad doing his first live broadcast on TV. The humour here just seems a lot more accessible than it did previously. The gameplay also goes further than just fetch questing by allowing you to do side missions for other people around the town, but also to work within the restaurant. The restaurant is one of the first places you help to restore, and as such it gradually gets more clientele, and you have the optional task of fulfilling people's wishes by choosing the correct dishes. If you make the right choices, then you get a nice chunky bit of pocket money, which then ties into being able to buy the correct ingredients for some of those inventions, and you can see the general flow. There are a few criticisms I have about this. Now, the world, as I say, is a nice place to explore, and it is designed around this time system, but I would also like to be able to accelerate time when I get to the end of the day, or to the things that I want to do for that time. If I'm waiting for a specific story beat that won't hit until the following day, I'd rather just press a button and skip to the next, maybe directly travel back to the house. Sometimes you'll have to wait for things like crops to grow, and we've done that before in other games, but when I'm gathering up all this pocket money, and my pockets are literally crammed with different things that I can go and purchase from the guy that sells them, why is there no way for me to sell what I've got? That was possibly one of the most frustrating things, because when I just ran out of money, but I had pockets full of gemstones, old fish, and that weird little cricket I just caught, I really think they should have put in a system to allow me to sell my items. And with those maps, let me fast travel. When I've been to a place, put a few fast travel locations in, and just make it a little less clunky traveling from Coal Town back to the main. The thing is, with all of this said, I actually enjoyed this game quite a bit. It has that relaxing pace that you'd expect. The controls are decent, and I love the sprint with the butt-only alien classic Shin Chan move, which had my kids in hysterics. It does feel a more focused experience. If the developer can just push past this idea of having every questline tied to simply collecting a bunch of items, or if you're going to do that, give the player more freedom in how they're acquired, they could be onto something really quite special. As it is, it's enjoyable but repetitive in that regard. I'd give gameplay 15 out of 20. The controls are fine, although oversimplified. Things like fishing is a one-button push until you feel vibration, and I would love that fast travel to be implemented. Controls also score 15 out of 20. It's actually quite refreshing to have these static hand-drawn backgrounds with a three-dimensional character. It's something we used to have all the time back in the day on other systems, but games very rarely use this style anymore, and I don't really know why. When it's done like this, it can be great. Those hand-painted environments look lovely, and there's a stark contrast between Coal Town and Unbent Village. There are some lovely little visual touches, and it runs at a flawless 30 frames per second with 32 millisecond response time. It just feels good. Load times are also reasonably minimal. The soundtrack and voice work are also excellent, although only available in Japanese. Shin Chan is all about trying to capture the atmosphere of rural Japan, but with the whimsy of a young child's adventures, and I think the artwork does that justice, and certainly fits its relaxed pace. The same goes for the audio. They're a great marriage. Visually, I give it 17 out of 20, and the same goes for audio. That gets 17 out of 20. Once again, we have the same price as the previous game. It's £33.99, and there should be a physical of this one, at least in the Asian regions, which you'll be able to get on PlayAsia using our discount if that tickles your fancy. But £33 or £34 is quite expensive. However, I think fans of this series will actually quite happily pay that, as it is a better experience, in my opinion, than the first game. It's not without its repetition, and I can only hope in the next game we really see this push towards actual gameplay even further with some more sensible design choices. For me, value scores 15 out of 20. Shin Chan Shiro and the Coal Town is an enjoyable, very funny, whimsical adventure that thankfully makes a lot more sense than the first game. While it does not avoid the repetition of the first, at least the reason for doing the things you are make a lot more sense. It gets a SwitchUp score of 79%. Thanks to the publisher for the review copy. Let me know in the comments, is this one you'll be interested in? If you're a fan of Shin Chan and you really like the first game, then you're going to like this even more. Thanks to all of you that enjoy the content. If you do buy any games on the eShop, you can get 5% in cashback just by buying your credit over at SwitchUp.gg, and we get the tiniest of all kickbacks from Nintendo. For all things Switch, all the time, keep it Switch Up. Cheers, guys. See ya!